right, you ready? All right, everybody ready? Okay. Good evening, everybody. Want to call our recess meeting to order, September 27, 2018. And first item on the agenda is to approve the audit. So can we get the auditors to come forth and go over it with us?
I'm Chris Taylor. I don't know if I need that thing. With the Wright Ward Hatton and Buell, and I'm going to do a brief presentation of the audit. Primarily go over the findings. I know y'all don't have a copy of it.
Yes, they do.
They do? Okay, good.
I made a copy.
All right. So if the first thing is on page 59.
I like how you start.
Yeah. Yeah.
59.
They set the order. I don't know why they don't put this up front. But this is a summary of the audit. And the first thing, number one on the financial statements, talks about the types of auditor opinion issued. And they're all unmodified, which is considered a clean opinion. And then I just want to bring up that in 16, the opinion was modified for the FBI investigation, which is now over with, so they're now unmodified. Number two talks about internal control over financial reporting, and it brings up this material weakness, which is the strongest issue with internal control, and a significant deficiency, which is a little less, and then non-compliance related to the financial statement. And those are yes, yes, and no, and last year it was the same yes, yes, and no. And on the next thing is the financial statement findings. This is the findings of the audit. And the first one is the only material weakness on there, which is about the employee termination and resignation control. And on that one, the present policy is that an employee terminates and tells his department head that he's terminating. And the payroll department then reports that to HR. And we felt like that's not a good separation of duties, and that the person should tell HR they're terminating as opposed to the department head. Then HR knows, and there's no issue of somebody still being paid when they're no longer working here. And in our recommendation, the next thing that we thought was to perhaps, there are different opportunities to go out and physically give the person some type of payroll proof or whatever, because like you can give them their W-2 form at the end of the year. You don't have to wait, you don't have to give them paychecks, but somebody from HR or finance can go actually say, we're going to be distributing W-2s, and see the person and get their identification, and that verifies that that they work here. It's sort of that it gives you that assurance that they work here. Then the second finding is regarding the building permits, and all the rest of these findings are significant deficiencies. And in building permits, this one's been going on for quite a while, and it really hasn't improved. But what it is that the files are incomplete as far as the permits, the renewals maybe not being done, and all the documentation of building aren't in there, and we have suggested that they do that. And another issue that we noted is that the computer, the building is sometimes calculating the permit fee wrong. And so what we have said is tell the encode, the computer people, that it's wrong, and they can fix it. I mean, it's just a matter of telling them, because we did some calculations, we came to a different number, And if you put, based on the ordinance, how the fee's supposed to be calculated, and we couldn't really tell why, but if you tell the software company, they can fix it to where it works.
Were we losing or were we gaining?
It went both ways, was
Okay.
kind of the thing. The net wasn't a lot, but you have to understand, we don't look at every permit, we just we test them. And so it could be either way, but it wasn't a lot of money, but it's just more that if the person was savvy, they could say, well, your ordinance says this, and my permit is this, why is it different? And you don't want that to happen. The next thing was on court fines and related assessments, which is repeat findings, been in there also for a number of years. And the biggest problem there is that they're not running the correct reports at a minimum at the end of the year, which is, I guess you'd call it, is it tomorrow or is it Monday? I mean, it's kind of,
Yeah, it's after tomorrow's release.
okay. And
And then I'm gonna come in and run some reports
Okay.
over the weekend.
Because
Yeah.
the system will only let you run these reports on September the 30th, or the end of the year.
Yeah.
You don't run them then, they're not gonna give you reliable data. You run them then, everything's fine. But if you don't, it's a problem. And it causes us to have to go back and try to reconstruct what the amounts were at the end of the year. And we are also recommending that you do this monthly as opposed to once a year to know that your accounts receivable is correct and has a good balance that you can attempt to collect.
Who's responsible for running those reports?
It would be the person in the department can run it. I mean, Clementine can run them. And one other thing was that there was some of the payments to the state were a little late. That you're supposed to pay the state within 30 days of by the end of the next month of the previous month. I think it was 3 instances where it was late, but the thing that we did is we checked the entire year, and the payments for the entire year equaled what they were supposed to equal. They were just a little late. It's really not a major thing. Okay, the next one is on pool cash reconciliations, and this one's a little complicated, and I don't want to bore you with what it is, but the city was using what they call a pool cash account, and if you don't run them correctly, they can become a nightmare. And in previous years, they weren't really being done correctly, and they became a nightmare. And what happened, I think it was in last year that they quit using pool cash?
Right, it was dissolved in 2016.
Okay.
The first part of fiscal year 2016, which is like fall 2015, that's when all that was dissolved, right before I got here. And so that is when the pool cash issues then, I guess.
Reared its ugly
Yeah,
head.
became known, once all those other entries stopped flowing.
So there really hasn't been an issue with it, but it was never really gone back to the previous years and fixed. It's really working now because there was really no issue for the year we were auditing. But the accounts were out of balance because of the way the pool cash works. And I can attest it's extremely complicated. And the way you're doing it now, which requires you have more checking accounts, but there's no issue with the pool cash. Okay, the next one is the utility fund. And this one is, there are 2 of them that are new findings that we found this year. And this one concerns the billing of a new, I don't think, Sissy knows.
It's a
New
new customer.
customer, is that what it
Right, it's a
was?
new customer coming on board who is kind of like adopting the meter of the previous customer, like a rental unit. Like Sally Smith moves out, Joe Smith moves in. When that rollover billing happens, there's a step where they're supposed to put in the ending balance from the previous customer, and potentially that step was getting missed in certain
Okay.
instances. And then that would show the new customer having like $40,000 worth of
Right.
usage in some cases.
The new customer was getting a bill for $40,000 on their first bill, and bringing it in and saying, whoa, what's going on here? And it was just the system, that's just the way the system works, and they would adjust it out, and it really, but it was kinda, this is, and the system will prompt you before this happens to fix it. And apparently the prompts weren't being listened to, I guess, or noted, and so they were going out. And I believe now that they are, because there's been turnover in the people that work there, and they're aware of this, and that now these are being corrected as they go. And that the people aren't getting a bill for $40,000 anymore. So it's really not a dollar issue, but it's more of the customer or the person in the city can go, whoa, they think, what's going on? And the next one was with the harbor accounts receivable, and it's a new one. And the problem with that, they had a similar problem where they were not running this report at the end of the year or monthly, and we have since told them that they need to run it at the end of the year and monthly. And the other problem was the accounts receivable, or the listing, still had stuff in it from when the system crashed. The system of the harbor crashed, and there was still junk in there. It wasn't any good. And the harbor master went through it all, and he gave us, he said, well, this is what I think, as this is at 9/30/17, a realistic harbor receivable. And so we said, fine, and we've adjusted all of that, but we're concerned that it has to continue forward. It can't just be fixed September the 30th, and this is all, everything we're talking about is September 30th to 17, not last week or anything like that. But going forward, that all of that is done, and they've assured us that that's correct. And then on page 63, I'm not going to go through it all, but there's a section on the corrective action plan of the city, what the city plans to do to correct all this. And a lot of this stuff was already being corrected, and so that I feel as though they're making a good effort to clean everything up. And but you can read through those, and a lot of the things that are being the corrections are the same things that I am saying that need to be done. Okay, the next thing is on page 57. And the state requires us to go through and test for compliance with various laws, and we check the things that they have, and there are two issues there that we came up with. And the first one was the minutes are, the minutes are supposed to have a revenue and expense report in the minutes every month. And the issue here is that the minutes are being sent over, but they're not in, the revenue and expense reports are being sent over, but they're not acknowledged in the minutes, I guess is the correct word. And I think the best way to do it is just spread them on the minutes. Just say they're there. But when we looked at the minutes, there was no indication that the revenue and expense reports had been there, had been acknowledged by the council, but they were here. So it's just a matter of spreading those on the minutes, and that one is fixed. And then the next thing was the state, in their infinite wisdom, has a fixed asset management manual that talks about tagging assets. And their rule is easily walkable is kind of the term they use. And when we looked at the easily walkable, the inventory system generates an asset number, but the tags were not being put on the asset. And it's just a matter of tagging the assets is all it is. It's not that they didn't have a number, it's just that they weren't tagged. And I think that's just primarily, there've been some cutbacks on personnel, and it's just something that went to the bottom of the pile. And it's very minor, but it's there, and the state requires us to look this stuff up, and so we have to report on it. And
Is
just
that-
for, what,
Excuse me, is that what, we went through that before, didn't we? With, tagging all our assets, they told us that before, didn't
19 years they've been telling us this.
they?
I mean, honestly, go back 19 years, we have this problem. It's- FBI told us we're doing it, not doing it either. That's why we're missing guns. It's
And
always-
right now, each department, it's their responsibility for their own,
What about public works?
of
They
everybody.
told us to tag every weed eater, every,
Everything, every
every
chair you're
shovel.
sitting in is supposed to be tagged.
yeah,
Them computers you got right there is supposed to be tagged.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
right.
So moving forward, they're responsible, be their department, everything be
So we're gonna make the department heads responsible for
somebody in each department.
each department, okay.
Yeah, Caitlin had started that
Caitlin
project.
started
And she did a great job, but just didn't get completed with her one time through the city. She got about halfway done, but yeah, we just didn't get fully complete with that project.
Okay. All right.
and just for comparative purposes, there are two of these this year, and last year there were 6 of these, and all of the 6 have since been corrected. So, okay, the next thing is some numbers. So if you go to page 15, and I'm really going to summarize these pretty. It might be kind of hard to follow, but and I'm going to be comparing 17, which is this year, to 13. And I think the reasons for these comparisons should become pretty obvious. And I'm only talking about the general fund, which is really the government fund. The rest of the funds they pretty much work on their own. So the cash in 2013 was $34,000, and this is actually on page 13, but you don't need to go to that page for this. But the cash was $34,423, and at the end of 17, it's $187,492. And the total revenue in 2013 was $7,695,000. The total revenue in 17 is $7,740,000. The total expenses in 13 were $8,629,000. And the total expenses in 17 were $7,1,999,000, or $1.5 million decrease in the expenses. And the excess of revenue over expenses, a deficiency we call it, in 2013 was $933,000, and the excess revenue over expenses, which is positive, is this year it's $540,221. So there's been a dramatic improvement in the numbers. And in the utility fund, the cash in 2013 was $119,000, and in 2017 it's $765,000. And the total revenues in 2013 were $2,600,000, and in 2017 they're $3,700,000. And I believe somewhere in there was a utility rate increase. I'm pretty sure that that's what the increase is.
2 of them, I think.
And the total expenses for 2013 were $6.1 million, and in 2017 they're $5.8 million. So So there's been a turnaround there of about 1.5 million also. That's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Y'all had mentioned something the other day about the PERS, and we were on the hook for like $8 million, and can you explain that a little bit?
Okay, that's on, page 11. You want it? Okay. I'll let the expert tell you.
Call the big guns in. Yeah, what we had discussed, we had mentioned earlier, and this has happened to the cities. This came into effect in 2014. Our governmental auditing standards board says we have a liability out there for all of these smaller cities that they're not booking on their financial statements. So they wanted us to go, they put out these horrible, big, huge, complicated announcements, and had the PERS system, which is the Mississippi retirement. They have to get specific financial statements published every year based on actuarial numbers to project out how much money they're going to need to pay for future benefits for all the retirees. And they, you know, this gets extremely complicated, and they've got insurance guys that make $100,000 in this thing. But anyway, it trickles down to you in that you have a portion of that liability. If you were to stop business tomorrow, how much money would you have to pay out over the extended years for those employees that will continue to draw off the PERS system? Because, you have to match a certain points. And if you were to stop business, what is that liability? They make us calculate that. And your liability is on page, I believe it's, yeah, page 11. If you look right in the middle of the page on page 11, it's up high. That's because I split the financial statements up and I'm used to looking in the middle of the page. Okay, it's up in the top part. You see net pension liability. The portion that belongs to the government is $8.7 million, and the portion that belongs to the business type is $1.2 million. That's what they're saying.
Where you at now?
I'm sorry, right? It's about
On page 11?
Yeah, page 11. It's up. It's about 6 lines down.
877, okay.
Yeah, you see that huge number, that 877? Yeah.
Right, net pension liability.
There's what they're making us book that on your financial statements now. It's kind of like depreciation expense, nobody really understands it, but it goes into the financial statements. And it's not actual cash going to be paid out anytime soon. You're already making your contributions to PERS. They just want us to recognize that there is a liability to the city to pay out. And that's why if you look down, if you go on down the very bottom, you'll see that your unrestricted on this set of financial statements is like negative $7.8 million. And it's pretty much that thing. That'll be the biggest difference between this first set of financial statements and the next set of financial statements. If you look over on page 13, that's kind of the one that shows you semi-cash basis, what's going on. It doesn't have all those those huge liabilities and other things that we have to put into it. That's why they gave you 2 set of financial statements. One is kind of like business-like, and the other is kind of like more like a cash basis.
So this $8,777,000 and $152 is something the state doesn't keep on hand, even though we pay them.
No, they go year to year kind of. They pay out the 13th check. It gets complicated, but they have some. If you look at the financial statements of PERS, they are solvent to a certain extent, but not to enough to cover all future expenditures. The likelihood of it ever happening is slim, but if the city were to go out of business and unincorporate next month,
Who would they collect from?
they would, they
I mean,
could
this is
come
crazy,
after-
it's crazy, right? Because who would you collect from?
Yeah, they'd come after the assets of
Yeah,
the city.
I mean,
Yeah, but in other words, we've already paid the money, but we're gonna be obligated to pay it again.
future
Yeah.
benefits.
I think that we compared it to
What they're
Social
saying is
Security.
we've already paid it.
But when you
No, No,
These for
no,
people that
we're
retire.
comparing to Social Security, it's
Yeah.
kinda like we're paying for,
Yeah,
what you're paying in
Paying Buddy's
now
retirement.
is paying for those people that are retired.
Yeah.
And then the kids coming up
Right.
underneath you are paying for your retirement, that's why
Right.
that rate keeps going up. And your rate will be going up again as well.
We have it budgeted already.
Like I said, it's like depreciation. Everybody kinda gets a grasp of what depreciation is. It's not any really money coming out of your financial statements, but. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. If you had 40 employees, if you shut business down today and 100 employees was on retirement, state retirement, that's how much you had to pay them employees for them until they die. That's what your liability would be.
Sure, go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Back to you.
I just have one other thing. I want to thank Sissy for everything she did during the audit, and Dana and Linda, because they were extremely helpful. And they're all three very busy people, and they were able to help us immensely, put up with us, and they made it all possible. And everybody we talked to in the city was very helpful. So thank y'all very much.
All right, thank
So
you.
what would your overall rating be of us, of the city right now?
Rating?
Yes. How are we doing? I mean,
Well, you have unmodified opinions, that's good. The findings could be, I'm not gonna say anything.
I always say.
The findings could be less, but they've improved.
I always say, if you really like to see how you're doing, compare yourself to someone else about your same size. And it's really easy to do. You go to the Secretary of State's website, and they have all of the municipal reports up there. Roll down reports and compare.
thank you.
On it, when we reviewed this was, I think Gary might ask about, how much we should have to carry us through a rainy day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody pretty well agreed, you look 3 or 4 months down the road, at least 3 months, which in our case would probably be about $2.5 million. I think that's about what we figured a few years ago when we started that reserve fund.
But I think it's closer to 2
Yeah.
now would be the amount. Because we just, if you just take the total expenses
Yeah,
in the
total.
general fund and divide by 4, and that would come to about $2 million. Would be the number that you want to be
In
in
the
there.
reserve.
Yes, in a reserve.
All right.
Thank
If
you very
that's-
much.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So we're gonna need a motion to approve the audit.
I'll make a motion that we approve the 2016, 2017 audit.
Second.
All right, there's a motion to approve this audit by Councilman Noblock and a second by Councilman Hoffman. Is there any discussion? If there's no discussion, let's vote the motion. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you all again. Appreciate it. All your hard work. Thank you for working for our city.
Thank you.
All right,
That's it. Starting with.
we have public portion here. What is public forum? Oh, don't look like nobody's here, so. Okay. All right, we have minutes, motion to approve the minutes for August the 27th, 2018 workshop meeting. Did you all get to, there's, look like there's
Motion to
1,
approve
2.
minutes as a change, as corrected.
All right, you want to do them one at a time, or you want to do all of them?
I mean,
Heather? We can do them all at one time? All right, let me just,
as amended. I sent all the changes in.
All right, so this is gonna be a motion to approve the minutes of August 27, 2018 workshop meeting, August the 30th, 2018 special meeting, August the 30th, 2018 budget workshop meeting, and September the 6th, 2018 public hearing meeting. And there's a motion by Councilman Seal to approve these minutes with the corrections. Second by Councilman Smith. Any discussion? There's no discussion, let's vote the motion. Motion carries 6-0. Councilman DeSalvo is absent. All right, is there anything from the council? Anything council need to discuss? All right, well, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Well,
Oh,
there's a
I
motion
thought you
by
were making
Councilman
that. I made a
Hoffman.
motion to adjourn.
There's a motion by Councilman Hoffman to adjourn, second by Councilman Smith. Vote the motion. Motion passes 6-0. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
So cruising the coast is next week. Sunday. Okay. When is Bay St. Louis Day?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think, I saw something where Blind Tiger has a band Wednesday.
There's a